The greatest tragedy in life isn't failing to achieve your goals. It's finally achieving them and realizing you've lost yourself in the process. You've spent years improving a version of yourself that was carefully constructed for everyone else's approval. What if all of that work was a renovation project done on a building that was never yours to begin with? That hollow feeling you get, even after becoming successful, is not a problem to be fixed, but a signal that your ambition has been too loud to hear your true self. Today, we're going to dismantle the survival mode that's keeping your success temporary. And I'm going to show you the one shift that changes everything. How to discover your true self. How to stop creating from lack and start leading with your heart. Pay attention. Let me describe a concept I call the hollow moment. It's late, maybe 2 a.m., and by every measure, it was a great day. You hit the target you were supposed to hit, and yet, lying there in the quiet, you still feel hollow, like something is missing. Not ungrateful or broken, just hollow, like you reached the thing, and somehow you don't feel the way you had hoped. Most people file that feeling away and try harder tomorrow in hopes that more discipline, more output, and more achievement will be the answer. What if I tell you today that the hole you feel in your chest, even when you've achieved your goals, is not a problem to solve, but a signal for something deeper? What if it's the deepest part of you trying to say something that your ambition has been too loud to hear? Right from the moment we were born, we're handed a set of equations about how life works. Go to school, study hard, make good grades, get a job, work hard enough, earn enough, become enough, achieve the goal, feel the fulfillment, win the approval, feel the confidence. But life keeps proving these equations incomplete for almost everyone. Human beings are wired for self-preservation. Protect yourself. Compare yourself to others. Accumulate. Win. Avoid failure and discomfort. Always make sure you're getting your share. That default wiring is keeping you in survival mode without you realizing it. The moment your entire existence revolves around protecting yourself, every conversation becomes a calculation. Every relationship becomes a transaction. Every opportunity becomes a competition. Every setback becomes a threat to your identity. Every success feels temporary because the next threat is already forming. And the thing you were chasing, peace, freedom, and fulfillment, keeps moving further away from you because you're chasing them with the wrong force underneath you. You cannot reach freedom while your hands are gripped around everything you're afraid to lose. The fullest life doesn't belong to the person who constantly asks, "How can life serve me?" It belongs to the person who asks, "How can I become someone who serves life?" I know how that sounds. Everything around has conditioned us to become selfish. Even our culture has made self-optimization the highest pursuit. My teachings doesn't dismiss any of that. It only introduces you to a new way of thinking and living. Consider one possibility. The greatest version of yourself only fully reveals itself when you stop making yourself the center of everything. You don't lose yourself in that shift. In fact, for the first time, you actually find your true self. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You spent real time understanding frequency, vibration, alignment, and the law of attraction. You've learned that your inner state creates your outer reality, that your energy, your focus, your emotional frequency shape what comes to you. And what I just said, stop making yourself the center of everything. Sounds like it contradicts everything you've learned. You may have questions like, if I shift my attention outward, what happens to what I'm trying to attract? Here's what I need you to understand. Fear-based wanting, the wanting that comes from lack, from "I don't have this yet, and I can't feel okay until I do," is one of the lowest vibrations a human being can operate from. Operating from love is different. Love is one of the most powerful, expansive, and creative frequencies that exists. When you lead with your heart, when you operate from genuine purpose, from real service, you're not lowering your vibration. You're raising it to a level that most people chasing their desires never actually reach. You're not removing desire. You're upgrading the inner state from which you hold it. That is the difference between wanting something from lack and creating something from fullness. and reality responds to those two states very differently. Most people spend years trying to improve themselves. Very few spend time discovering themselves. And those are not the same journey. Improvement asks, how do I become more? Discovery asks, who was I before the world convinced me I needed to become someone else? Your true self isn't the identity you've assembled for approval. It isn't the performance you've perfected for the people watching or the mask that fear built when the world told you who you needed to be. Your true self is the part of you that sees clearly, loves deeply, and lives fully. The part that carries something no one else on this earth possesses. Your specific lens. Your specific way of connecting what others see as unconnected. Your specific combination of experiences, failures, gifts, and perspective that has been waiting for a long time beneath every version of yourself you've been building on top of it. No one else in the universe has your gifts. That's why comparison is one of the most quietly devastating things you can do to yourself. The person the world is actually waiting for is you. The moment you spend your life measuring yourself against someone else's path, the world loses the one person only you could have become. If your true self is hidden beneath fear, comparison, and expectations, then the obvious question becomes, how do you uncover it? The answer is surprisingly simple. Lead with your heart. Before you dismiss that as poetic advice, understand what it actually means. It's not romance, not the version of love you feel like you have to earn. It's something far more demanding than that. A deliberate choice about the state from which you operate. A way of living that completely changes how you experience the world. Most people experience love as something that happens to them. A feeling that arrives, stays for a while, and eventually fades. Something triggered by the right circumstances. But the love this masterpiece is pointing toward is different. It's something you choose, regardless of your circumstances, regardless of how you feel, whether your good deeds are reciprocated or not. A state you inhabit on purpose, a lens through which you decide to see the world. Every decision you make, every reaction and action, every choice about who to be in a given moment, were ultimately driven by one of two forces: fear or love. There is no neutral ground between them. The only question is, which one were you operating from when you made it? I want to pause here for a moment. We're about to move into the part of this documentary that most people hear and immediately agree with. However, agreeing with something is not the same as letting what you agreed with drive any change in you. There's a version of watching this video where you nod along, feel something genuine, and then return to operating from exactly the same place you've always operated from. And there's a version where something here sinks into your mind and reorganizes something underneath it. Before we continue, ask yourself honestly, which force has actually been running my decisions lately? Which one has genuinely been in the driver's seat? Love or fear? Whatever the honest answer is, that's exactly where this is going next. Take a moment and think about your biggest decisions. Why did you stay in that job longer than you should? Why did you avoid starting that business? Why didn't you tell someone how you really felt? Why do you constantly compare yourself to others? Why do you keep chasing approval? Look beneath the surface, and you'll often find the same answer. Fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of failure. Fear of embarrassment. Fear of not being enough. And the remarkable thing about fear is how reasonable it sounds when it speaks. It doesn't introduce itself as fear. It calls itself caution, practicality, wisdom, timing. It tells you it's protecting you, but in reality, it's shrinking your world. Fear is obsessed with one question: what happens to me? While love asks something completely different. What can I contribute? One question contracts, the other expands. The life you end up with is the sum of which question you answer most often. Here is one of the most profound ideas in this masterpiece. Fear is future-based. Love is present. Every fear you have ever experienced lives in a future that hasn't happened yet. It asks familiar questions like, what if I fail? What if they reject me? What if I'm not enough? What if I embarrass myself? Fear drags you out of this moment and drops you into imaginary futures that may never arrive if you really tried. Love brings you back to this moment. the only place anything real can actually happen. The moment your attention shifts from protecting yourself to serving something beyond yourself, like raising the level of your excellence in order to raise it in others, your fear loses its authority. Not because a great outcome is guaranteed, but because you stopped making yourself the center of every situation. And that is real freedom. The freedom to be fully present in whatever you're doing, because you no longer have an ego to protect. Now, I need to say something about leading with your heart that most people who talk about this will never tell you. It costs more than you think. Leading with your heart costs you the right of needing things to go a certain way before you can feel okay. The right to let other people's behavior determine your inner state. The right to hold on to the grudge when you've been wronged. The right to close yourself off when the risk feels too high. These rights have been so familiar for so long that giving them up doesn't feel like freedom at first. It feels like a loss, and that's the cost of leading with your heart. Let's explore these examples together. You're in a meeting and a colleague presents an idea that is yours to the room, but your name doesn't come up. Before you've consciously decided anything, you feel it, a contraction somewhere in your chest. Something that begins calculating before a single thought forms. Your mind spirals. Do I say something? Will I look petty if I say something? What do people think? What does this mean about me? For the next hour, maybe longer, you're not fully in the room. You're managing a wound. One part doing the work, another part replaying the moment and deciding what it means. Now imagine something different. Same room, same moment. You notice what happened. You address it if it needs addressing, directly without drama. But underneath the action, no contraction in your chest, no wounded ego. Because your sense of who you are was never tied in that person's acknowledgement to begin with. Here's another example. Traffic is crawling, you let someone in your front, but they don't acknowledge it. And something in you notices the absence of the acknowledgement. You give your best effort to something that matters. It goes unrecognized. And something in you feels the weight of that silence. You extend yourself for someone who doesn't extend back. And something in you quietly asks if it was worth it. These moments are real. But here is what awaits on the other side of it. When you stop needing the acknowledgement to feel complete. When you stop needing the recognition to feel worthy. Something subtle changes. Your peace no longer depends on another person's behavior. And for the first time in perhaps a very long time, you've taken your power back. Leading with your heart brings you peace and freedom. Therefore, make it a way of life. This is where this masterpiece becomes more interesting. Because what I just described, giving without needing return, serving without needing recognition, loving without conditions, looks like the most selfless way to live. It is. But it is simultaneously the most personally rewarding. Why? When your purpose becomes bigger than your ego, you experience something achievement alone can never provide. Real freedom. The freedom to fail without it defining you. The freedom to learn without shame attached. The freedom to grow without needing anyone's permission. The freedom to pursue excellence without constantly wondering how everyone else sees you. Surprisingly, the less obsessed you become with yourself, the more fully you become your true self. Imagine two people, same abilities, same preparation, same opportunity. The first walks into the performance carrying questions like, what if I fail? What will they think if this goes wrong? They perform with a net beneath them, an ego that needs to be caught if things don't go well. That net is invisible, but it weighs more than most people ever realize. It divides attention. It makes every mistake feel like a verdict on who you are. The second walks in carrying a different question. How can I give my best effort to this? They perform without a net. Not recklessly, but freely. One fears mistakes. The other learns from them. One is controlled by outcomes. The other is committed to excellence. Which one do you think will perform with greater freedom? The answer is obvious. The same principle applies to entrepreneurs, artists, leaders, parents, students, and every one of us. That shift, from protection to contribution, from fear to love, is the difference between average performers and high performers in all areas of life. When you stop making success your identity, success often follows at a different scale. Not because you wanted it more, Because you started working from purpose instead of fear. There's another misconception that deserves to be challenged. Many people think excellence is about outperforming everyone else. But that's competition. Excellence is something much quieter. It's the daily decision to honor the highest version of yourself, whether anyone notices or not. When you begin leading with your heart, you stop working only for promotions. You work because excellence has become part of your identity. You stop learning only to impress people. You learn because growth has become an expression of who you are. You stop loving your work only when it's exciting. You even begin appreciating the repetitive, uncomfortable, and difficult parts of your work. Because you understand something most people never do. Who you're being matters more than what you're getting. And strangely enough, that's usually when extraordinary results begin to appear. Not because you're chasing them harder, but because you've become the kind of person capable of producing them consistently. How do you begin leading with your heart? Start with these 3 simple practices. 1. Lead with identity, not intention. Every morning before the plan, ask yourself one question. Who do I want to be today? Not what do I want to achieve. Your inner state always precedes your outer results. Get the state right, and the actions follow effortlessly. Identity first, always. 2. Enter every room as a contributor. Before any important interaction, a meeting, a difficult conversation, anything that matters, ask yourself, how can I leave this person better than I found them? Not because of what you can get from them, because that's the kind of person you've decided to become. Encouragement, honesty, full presence, patience. The smallest, genuine acts of contribution creates extraordinary impact. 3. Guard the gate. Your attention is not passive. It is the most powerful creative force you possess. Whatever passes through it repeatedly becomes your identity. Comparison, resentment, entitlement, fear. These are not harmless background noise. They're identity architects. Every time you let them run unchecked, they're quietly building something in you. Replace them deliberately and consistently with gratitude, purpose, humility, and excellence. Because whatever occupies your attention long enough eventually becomes your character. And your character is what creates your reality. The deepest lesson in this masterpiece is not that love is important. Most people already believe that. The deeper truth is this. Love is the highest state of consciousness available to you. The state from which your clearest thinking emerges. Your most courageous decisions get made. Your deepest work gets done, and your truest self finally has enough room to exist. When you devote your life to becoming someone whose presence genuinely raises the people around you, something quietly extraordinary begins to happen. The weight of comparison and fear lifts. You discover something that no achievement ever told you. Fulfillment was never waiting at the end of success. Success was always meant to grow out of fulfillment. If something in this documentary interrupted the way you've been thinking, I want to hear it. What does leading with your heart mean to you? Share your perspective in the comments. Someone else may read it at exactly the moment they need it. And if you're on your own journey of mastering your inner world to create a better outer one, consider joining us. Because here at Aligned Frequency, we're not just chasing better results, we're becoming the kind of people capable of creating them.